dearest lovelies, and welcome to our podcast today. I'm sitting here with Rishi Kumar, and so Rishi is local to Southern California. I met Rishi through a Kiss the Ground class where he was teaching gardening, and I really liked some of his morals and teachings. So here's Rishi.
Hello, hi everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Kaylin.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
Can you please talk briefly about gardening and why you got into gardening and how you feel it can be beneficial for others?
Yeah. I grew up here in Southern California in the suburbs in a city called Diamond Bar, and I had no interest in gardening growing up. My mom had an interest in gardening, and my grandparents have always gardened. But I was totally not into it. I was more video games and computer technology person. And I actually went to school. I went to college and for a computer science degree, which I did finish. But it was, I think, actually, I've thought about this recently, and what actually got me into gardening was my stomach. You know, I had a lot of digestive problems growing up. I still have a lot of digestive problems, and so after high school, I started to kind of explore what was, what could be causing these problems. And so I actually went on a raw food diet for 2 years while I was in college, which was an interesting choice and experience. And that kind of got me into learning about food, learning about where food comes from, how food is grown. I got interested in I got interested in this idea of organic food and like what that meant. I knew, I kind of heard at that time, this is like 2006. So you heard about organic food, it was kind of there, it was more expensive, but I didn't really know what it was other than that, it meant it was supposed to be more natural or, whatever that means. So I was reading about, I was reading some books that, people had recommended me, like my brother had recommended me some books, written by Michael Pollan and Vandana Shiva. And so at that point I was like, okay, if I really want to understand, what my food is and where it comes from and why does it matter how it's grown, that I realized I should try to start growing some myself, and that was the beginning of my foray into gardening.
It's really neat. I think that's probably the most inspiring way, to help yourself and those around you.
Yeah, and I think, it's a common way for people to kind of come into it. I feel like one of the common ways that people get into gardening is because of some health problem.
Yeah.
And it's a very, especially now, I feel like it's a pretty common path into it.
So how do you think it could be beneficial for others?
Well, the way that what gardening has done for me is, one, it's not just about food. That's definitely something that I've learned, and I got into it because of food. I was understanding that, what I ate and how the food I ate was grown affected me. I think what I've learned over the years is more than the food, or in addition to the food, I guess there's a healing that happens in a garden that goes far beyond the food, or you could just say that the food that you get in the garden is more than the food that you put in your mouth. The food that you get in your garden is, there are all these what we think of as physical things. So you're getting yeah, you're eating this nutritious food, you're out in the sun, you are you're physically, you're moving your body,
Mm-hmm.
um, you're learning how to. I mean, one thing I realized early on was that I had no idea how to use my body. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
um, even though like you're in school, you're writing and typing, and maybe you're in a sport, um, but in gardening you really have to like learn how to use the whole body,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly how to use your hands. And so that was a really important piece for me, like learning how to use my hands, and also learning that how powerful your hands are,
Mm-hmm.
as like these creative forces. Um, but then beyond that, like kind of physical food, there's all this. There's the food of grounding. There's the food of feeling what your feeling your relationships, feeling what your relationships actually are,
Yeah.
which I think is something that's very hidden from us in in this culture. Um, so there's a lot of, it goes far beyond the what we think of as the physical realm, and it's a very like it's a deep process. It's a very holistic process, right?
Yeah.
Like gardening involves your whole body, your whole being, and it feeds your whole being.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Mind, body, soul. Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned culture. What are your views on Western culture and modern culture?
Yeah, culture is something that I talk about quite a lot. It's actually how I open the class with Kiss the Ground. The first
Mm-hmm.
day is really talking about culture. And I think culture is really important to it's really important to look deeply at the culture that you were raised in, and the culture that is kind of predominant on I don't know, on Earth right now.
Yeah.
And that's because culture is basically like a set of assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Culture is a set of assumptions that you are raised in, and that really are you've stopped thinking about them a long time ago. Like it's something that you were it's these values that have been ingrained into you,
Yeah.
and it forms your way of seeing the world. And in forming your way of seeing the world, it can either reveal things or it can hide things. And what I've been learned, what I thought I learned 10 years ago when I got into this was that I thought that I had kind of awakened to the things that had been hidden from me by my upbringing and by the culture that I was raised in. And I, through my experience, my more recent experiences, I realized how many more layers of uh, assumptions were hidden
Mm-hmm.
than I realized, and how deep these assumptions go. And yeah, so I mean, basically, what I've been learning to unlearn are a lot of these assumptions within Western culture that, to me, are the main drivers behind some of the challenges that we're facing today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so difficult for us to address the issues, because we literally can't see them, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about in the class, is that your culture and your language are very tied together. And so in our language we have these words and these ideas that really literally prevent us from even being able to see, to speak, to address any of these deep issues that we're seeing like come to the fore right now.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned in the class that it's not humans that are necessarily damaging the earth, but the culture. Would you want to talk a little more on that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I when I got into all of this gardening and organic food, like you're getting yourself into like the environmental world too, the environmental movement. And so in the environmental movement, um, the language that's used around climate change, the language that's used around any of the, so-called environmental problems, that language is always of, so the language is always about this kind of, if you look at the language, it's basically expressing that there is this inherent, uh, like humans are inherently dangerous to the natural world, right?
Yeah.
Um, so what does that say? And what are some of those phrases? Like you hear a lot about reducing your footprint. You hear a lot about reducing your carbon emissions. In terms of climate, I came up with some phrases that we hear like, you got your zero waste, you got your net zero, your carbon free, like everything is about reducing your impact, right? Reducing your footprint, and with the goal being that you should make your footprint zero,
Yeah.
right? And I share this talk that Bill Gates gave, a TED talk, where it was like the title is something like The Race to Zero.
Oh, okay.
So what is that, what are all the assumptions? What's the underlying message behind all of those phrases? The underlying message is you have a footprint, right? Like you have a footprint, and that footprint is negative. That footprint is bad. And the best thing that you can do, the best that you can possibly achieve in terms of the environment and nature, and I'm putting quotes around both of those phrases, and I don't use those phrases anymore, is the best thing that you can do is make make that negative footprint, make that bad footprint disappear.
Yeah.
Make it zero. Um, and I think you see that, like, the impacts of that mindset, the impacts of that cultural view are so apparent right now. And with all this rise in like anxiety and depression and like mental health issues, like they're literally stemming from that view, which is saying that the best thing you can, basically they're saying, that cultural view says the best thing you can do is kill yourself. The best thing you can, like, the best thing for this earth is for you not to be there.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, that's a really dark place for people to be. That's a very dark place to put people. And what my work now has changed to be about is changing that story to one that is not just more hopeful, but to me more accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I totally agree that, I mean, like you said before, humans have been on this earth for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just the culture now that has been actually making more of a negative impact. And you mentioned that we should not lessen our impact necessarily, but a greater impact in a positive way.
Yeah.
So how do you think we should go about putting like a positive impact?
Yeah, so the phrase I've been using, or like my slogan right now, is increase your footprint. And so, yeah, it's just, right now is a very interesting time, because especially right now with with what's happening in the Amazon, we're hearing a lot about, oh my God, this is a catastrophe, which I agree, this is a catastrophe. We have to stop this. We have to, we're hearing all that, which is an important thing to hear. But the part we're missing, the part that we're not hearing, is what is the history of this place. And the history of the Amazon is that the Amazon is a garden. Is a garden that has been tended, cultivated, created by thousands of indigenous tribes, thousands of indigenous cultures that had an amazing way of seeing their relationship with the earth. They had an amazing cultural view that allowed them to really like create something that is so, it's almost like, if you're grown up in Western culture, like the idea that people could live in a place and then that create and live in such a way that they create the largest, most diverse, most like what I don't know, like the most like energy dense, one of the most energy dense places on Earth, that the humans could live there and create that through their actions is incomprehensible to the Western cultural view, right? Uh, so that's what what I would want, what I'm trying to get out, what I'm trying to get people to see through my work is that we can't we can't heal what needs to be healed by reducing our footprint. We can't, like there's all these forces are already in motion, and we're not gonna help. We're not gonna move those forces in another direction by getting out of the way. Like we have to learn how to care.
Yeah.
And that's also, you I think it's a completion of the caring, because we have a lot of, in the environmental movement you have this you have all these people that emotionally care about the earth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the part that they're actually missing, which would make their care more complete, their care more whole, is learning how to care for the earth.
Exactly.
you know so that's where we're at right now. We all realize that we care. Now the trick is to learn how to care.
I know that this is something you talked about in the class, that one of the things that we could do is actually start like a garden around our homes and stuff like that, and that would actually help with global warming and that sort of deal.
Yeah. I'm really trying to get people to feel that, um, we people feel right now that climate change or global warming or global weirding or whatever you want to call it, it's this kind of big thing in the sky, and it just comes down and it shows its face in different parts of the world, like throughout the year. And okay, oh my god, this is like overwhelming. There's nothing we can do about it. Like, how can we as individuals um, affect this, big scary thing,
Yeah.
right? And what and the idea again is that like global climate change is this big thing that's coming down to us. And what I'm the story I'm trying to change that's the story I'm trying to change, and what I'm trying to change towards is climate change is a big thing made up of all these little things. And it's not about, I don't even care about carbon. Like, I would really like to stop talking about carbon. It is, that's one piece of it, but really, like, it's distracting from, what are all the little pieces that are making up climate change? Yeah, some of it is carbon, but a lot of it is, us paving over land all over the world,
Yep.
concreting rivers, building dams, cutting down forests, not taking care of soil, like literally anywhere, not caring
Yeah.
for soil on almost 90, on like 98% of the earth. No one's caring for the earth. Like, no one knows how to care for the earth. So it it doesn't I would really like to stop talking about carbon and fossil fuels and like, carbon reduction technology. Is like, it for me, this is all about care.
Yeah.
And gardening is a way that you can care right where you are and make an impact right where you are.
Exactly.
And today, we're sitting here in Diamond Bar, California. It's gonna be probably 90 degrees today, but we're sitting under this mulberry tree and this banana tree and this bitter leaf tree and this, chaya tree, and we're sitting outside in the sun, and it's not hot.
Exactly.
and that is climate change. It's not about, I'm not trying to stop climate change. I am trying to make the climate change. I want the climate, right now the climate's already out of balance, you know? So gardening is a way that you can make the climate change towards balance.
Yeah, so I feel like definitely if we, had more life on Earth, then the carbon emissions and stuff like that, it wouldn't have as near bad of an impact, I definitely feel like a lot more people should look into gardening around their homes, or gardening and sharing these ideologies and the idea of caring for our earth, because the earth is what sustains all of us.
Yeah.
Without our earth, we wouldn't have anything
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So we should all definitely not just look into, but feel like our earth is suffering. I think we all know our earth is suffering.
Yeah, I think we all feel it. I think we all feel it, and I think part of the change too is, and this is something that's changed for me really recently, is, gardening, and I try to express this in the class, and I'm not sure if I need to make it more clear or not, but gardening is not just a practice that happens in the soil and happens with the, with trees and plants. Gardening is something that happens inside of you. And that's, like this year I haven't actually been doing a lot of gardening in plants and soil. I've been doing a lot of inner gardening. And what that inner gardening is, and is taking, it's the same principles apply to life in any form. And in the garden, some of the things that some of the changes, some of those cultural views that you can change, that will help your external outside garden change, are these flips where we're going from seeing things as waste to seeing things as gifts. Seeing that the soil, even when it looks dead, even when it looks degraded, even when it looks like nothing could happen in that soil, like this is a very common thing, right? Like, people come to my gardening classes and they say, my soil is bad. My soil is bad. Everything I plant in there dies. I need to get new soil, right?
Yeah.
And so what are you saying? What are you saying? Like, you're saying that soil has no value.
Yeah.
That soil has nothing to offer. That land has nothing to offer. There's no way for this land to be repaired. Like, it needs something from the outside. And what these kind of shifts will teach you is that soil has a lot of value.
Yeah.
It always has value. Whether you've degraded it or whether it's in a more mature state, it doesn't matter. The value of the soil never changes. What changes is your view that the soil has value. Your view that what we call waste is actually a gift, and that gift, when you combine that gift of, wood chips and coffee grounds and food scraps, and when you put those gifts into the soil reflects that you've given it gifts.
Exactly.
Right? And we do the same thing that we do outside, we do it to ourselves. We say, I have no value. We say, I am a waste. We say, I have no gifts. I have nothing to offer. I can never be repaired. I need something else or someone else to come in and fix me. I need to buy things to feel better. I am a degraded person. Like, we're constantly telling ourselves these things, even if we don't, think we are. Like, I never thought that I was someone who didn't value myself, but I realized that I didn't value myself for myself. I valued myself for my accomplishments. I valued myself for the things that, the goalposts that I hit, that society told me to hit. And the times that I didn't hit those goalposts, I would tell myself these things, and I didn't really realize that I was, you'd say, oh, you're not successful, you're a loser, like you'll never amount to anything. You tell yourself these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like those are the same things you tell the soil,
Yeah.
And when you shift that view and you say, no, I always had value, I will always have value.
Mm-hmm.
What and these things that I am seeing as a waste, these are actually, if I just shift my view, these are my gifts, and I can use these gifts to nurture myself and cultivate, do some of that inner gardening. And then, a healthy garden is really just the soil's expression of itself.
Yeah.
The soil is showing its beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And when you garden yourself, then you're able to express that, you're able to express your inner value and your inner beauty.
I definitely agree. Definitely. There was something that a mentor had told me like a few days ago that was, happiness comes from knowledge, not accomplishments, to go off kind of what you were saying. And I think that, culture puts a lot of these stigmas that we should go to high school, go to college, university, and get like some job working for someone else.
Yeah.
Like the goal is always to work for someone, to train us to be a worker. And I personally am not taking that route. I personally am taking the route of going to, I graduated high school and I'm going straight to life coaching. I'm not, I'm skipping the college route because I just feel like I don't need to.
Right.
And I'm happy with that. I think like it's amazing. I'm going into exactly what I know I want to do. But it's like unfortunate that people that would be in similar cases of me might not feel that way. They might feel like, oh, I'm not going to college, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
My parents are going to think I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Like, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I've graduated high school a long time ago, and the friends of mine who have continued to hit the goalposts, without wondering where those goalposts are coming from and who they're serving, they're the ones who I feel are they feel the most lost.
Yeah.
Because
definitely.
They've been walking down this path or running down this path for so long that they forgot how they got there. What are they doing?
Exactly.
Like, they're tired.
Living for somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Not living for their own life, what they genuinely love to do.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate.
And that's something that, I've been realizing this year how upset I am at school, my school upbringing, and it's something that I found or when I look back, at least on my own life, in school, and like we weren't really taught a lot of ways to express ourselves, and we weren't taught that expressing yourself has much value.
Yes.
Like if you're writing, you got to be writing about some Shakespeare or history, or like you have to be writing a report about some scientific accomplishment. There was no one ever said to me, write what you feel.
Yeah.
No one ever said to me, go outside and like if you're gonna move your body, you gotta be playing a sport and competing against someone, or like trying to win a trophy, right? Like no one ever said move your body just to express what your body wants to do. Like, we're not taught to express ourselves, and then when you're not taught to express yourself, you're not taught to value your own expression, and you're taught to value just these, like I said, these goalposts and these competitions. Then when you do that for so long, you haven't cultivated, you haven't gardened those ways of expressing yourself, and so you get to a point where you're just you're lost, and you don't know how to feel what's happening in your body, what's happening in yourself, and you have no way of expressing it, and you're very closed up.
This is the term I use. going to the sound of your soul, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
The beat of your drum or the
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
own rhythm.
And I feel like the disconnect from your heart and your soul, and your, all of the above, that is the root of illness. That's the root of disease.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
people, and I do believe, as harsh as this may sound, that people that get diseases, it's for a reason. Like, it's meant, they got it because there's a lack somewhere,
Mhm.
you know? And they need to look inwards, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Not. I wouldn't say that it's not out of a lack. It's not out of a lack. It's out. It's a disconnect between. It's basically just not being able to feel what's going on in
Yeah.
yourself. There's a, and this is some. So I've been. I'm particular about my words.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in our culture, even in like the kind of the new age or like whatever you want to call it, like that movement, the yoga movement or the meditation movement or the spirituality movement, like we always talk about connection,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, I need to feel connected. I need to feel like I need to feel that connection, or if you're having a problem, you feel disconnected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that again is like the wrong language. I think it's not that you need to feel connected. It is that you need to feel the reality of your relationships, and that the reality of your relationships is not there's not like a string tying you and me together. It's just that we are actually like in the same field.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it's not it's not finding a connection, it's realizing that there is a unity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um,
Definitely.
and there's no lack, it's just imbalance, or your views of yourself not lining up with
Mm-hmm.
who you actually are.
I think when I said lack, I meant more kind of like an unbalance of self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So let's move on. What's your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote, and I use this a lot in my teaching. There's a quote from Albert Einstein, and I think there's a few different translations or something, or maybe people wrote it down differently, but basically says, you can't solve a problem, or a problem can't be solved with the mindset that created it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really like that, because it kind of gets down to it's getting to those ideas about assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
and what you're not seeing, what you're not looking at, what you're not thinking about, what you can't see, what you literally can't think about. And it's, so I use that quote, but I change it,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, I like to talk about culture. So I say, my version is, a problem can't be solved with the culture that created it.
Yeah.
And it's going, the reason for that change would be that it goes beyond the mind, it goes beyond thought. Like
Mm-hmm.
it goes into all of these assumptions, like the way that we feel the world, the way that we believe that we are, the beliefs we have about our place in the world. Like, all of those things can hide the problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I definitely agree. We should share how we feel. We should talk more. We should spread awareness.
Mhm.
Because I say this often, but I feel that a lot of people are suffering in silence. A lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
Many more than we would ever know, because they're suffering in silence.
The majority of people, I would say,
Yeah.
in our culture.
I mean, they say, I think it's like 80% of people don't even like their jobs. And that's really unfortunate, because that's something that you do every single day.
Yeah.
Well, almost every single day.
Yeah.
So I think speaking out, talking about things, I feel like the only way that we can ever make a change as if we actually change needs us and we need change, you know? So we need to talk about these things. We need vulnerability is power.
Yeah.
And we need to talk. We need to be vulnerable. We need to share.
Yeah.
That's the only way change is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. Yeah, we can't be we can't be hiding, you know. We can't be hiding. We can't be. I think that, and it all comes back to these same cultural things, like, you know, that, oh, if you're feeling like this, then don't say anything, because then people, like, you'll say this to yourself, right? Like, oh, like, if I tell anyone about this, they'll think something's wrong with me. You know, if I tell anyone about this, then they'll think I'm dumb. If they'll think I'm, you know, like, I'm crazy. Like, I should just keep it in. Don't tell anyone. You know, like, I'll figure it out myself. And that's all coming from that view of, you know, you don't have value. That people don't appreciate you. You know, people won't be accepting of you. And also that, you know, that last piece about I can handle it myself is the view that you are separate from everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And that that you could handle it within yourself, but you can only you have to yourself is not who you know, yourself is not confined to what you call your body. Like, yourself is everyone. So you literally can't address it without sharing it and talking about it.
And I think that's a good point to bring up, that we are not separate from everyone else, in a broader sense, that there's like a chain of life, the web of life.
Yeah.
You know, we're all connected. We breathe the oxygen, the plants make oxygen, we give them the materials to make it, and the plants, the weather, the ocean, the water, the sun, the air, everything is in a flow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so we are all literally like the yin yang, you know? It's all in a balance. It's all in a flow. We are not separate from those across the world. We're not separate from our neighbors. We're all one.
Yeah.
And I like to view... So it's kind of funny. Well, I mean, when it was funny to me when I was younger, my dad, when anyone would ask him, what race are you? He would say, I'm an earthling. And at first I didn't get it when I was younger. I was just like, Dad, really? Like, that's kind of weird. But now that I grow up more, I know that my dad is like really wise for that, because we are all just earthlings.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if your skin is white, tan, or, you know, darker or red or orange or blue. Like, it doesn't matter. We are just souls, and we're here on this earth, and we all have a purpose, and we're here for something. We're all connected. We're connected with the trees, the animals, the water, the air, every element, the fire. So
I'm gonna go back to the words here again, but like, I like if you read about like indigenous cultures, the word that they use a lot is woven. You know, it's not like there's not like a thin thread coming, you know, connecting us together. It's a weaving, that we're all part of the same fabric.
I love that.
Yeah, and it really, that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. Like, it goes beyond connection. It is a unity. It's another word I've heard is interbeing.
Can you explain that word a little more?
Interbeing, like, you know, that my being and your being are not separate, that they're, you know, they're overlapped, or they're, you know, I had this thought actually many years ago, you know, and it kind of helped me conceptualize this, you know, just like, imagine a paper and there's an infinite number of dots on it, right? So if you draw a circle around the dots, inside that circle there's still an infinite number of dots. You know, so it's like the world is this kind of this unlimited thing, you know.
Yeah.
And we draw a circle around ourselves, but we're still also unlimited, and we're still like those those points are still all there within us.
Mm-hmm. Is there any question that you wish I would have asked, but I didn't get around to it?
I think I want to talk a little bit more about like these stories that we have of separation,
Okay.
because I think those are, for me, the most important things to address, and also just some of the ways that we conceptualize the world. Like, I've been kind of interested recently in just some of the language the difference between the language that we use
Mm-hmm.
and that feels right to use, and the way that we think about the world, right? So, and I find it's actually really interesting to compare the way that uh, Black Americans speak English and the way that white Americans speak English, because you've had all these phrases kind of come into the general use from Black Americans because they are more accurate than the way that white Americans have speak. So, like I really like this. Yeah, I really like the phrase that everyone's using now, like "I feel you."
Mm.
You express something to me, and I don't say "I hear you." You say "I feel you."
Yeah.
I literally feel what you're expressing. Like, it goes beyond the words. I'm not just
Mm-hmm.
listening to the words. I'm literally feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah.
You know. And now we talk about like, oh, I went in that place and oh, it had a good vibe. Like,
Yeah.
and I was vibing with that person. Like, I feel that, it's a much more feeling centered language.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think people are using that language more because, and it's not because, not necessarily, it might be something to do with because it's cool or whatever, but I think it is actually more accurate. It reflects what we're trying to say
Yeah.
in a deeper way. So, but at the same time, you say I feel you,
Mm-hmm.
but then if I ask you, do you actually feel what the other person is feeling? Then most people would say no, right? Because their thoughts are saying, no, I don't actually feel them. I'm just saying that because it sounds right. And that's what I want to switch. Like, I think in this view of interbeing, like, I am actually feeling you.
Yeah.
I'm literally feeling what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And you've opened yourself, you expressed it to me in a way that I feel exactly what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that idea of empathy and not sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think that's really important. I feel like if we could kind of
Exactly.
listen to what, like, fully listen our ears and not our mouths, and listen to what someone else is saying, not only just someone else, but the plants, the animals, the earth, and empathize with it, we would take a lot more action to actually, take part in healing it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an openness, once you start to feel that, oh, I'm not closed, like I'm not a person with borders. I'm a person with boundaries, right? And I can kind of reach out of those boundaries when I need to, and literally feel the other person that's next to me, feel the tree that's next to me. Like, when I can reach out to those things, and I know that I need to do that for my own health and for our mutual health, like, then that openness comes, and you start to feel that, that weaving, or that,
Yeah,
you feel that weave
definitely.
much more strongly, and then you get, the feelings that you get all these, like, amazing feelings that you have been missing out on, by being closed off.
I definitely agree. Is there any last messages that you would like to share to anyone listening?
Last messages, I would say, I'm gonna repeat my personal slogan right now, which is increase your footprint. I should say it better. I say increase your footprint. um, and what I mean by that is, you are walking here. You're on this earth. You're walking and you're moving and you're having a role and you're making an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And learn, be open to, be aware of that you can have an impact. You can make that impact one of care, one of love, one of growth. And that's not, not just in terms of the soil and the trees and, and the rivers and the lakes. Like, increase your footprint of love and care for yourself too.
Yeah.
And realize that those are not separate things. That by caring for yourself, you are caring for the earth, and by caring for the earth, you are caring for yourself. And don't be so focused on, like, if you're not at a point where you can go out and plant a forest, like, that's fine. Work on gardening yourself. Work on that inner gardening until you feel that strength to go out and plant 100 trees. Like,
what do you think are the best, a few of the great tips for someone who might need to do a little bit of inner gardening? What kind of tips would you like to give to someone?
I would say one, and I know I just said don't go out and plant trees, but I also want to say, like, being in a garden will help you see what's going on inside of you outside. And it will reflect back to you what's going on. So being in a garden, not necessarily like starting a huge project or getting on starting something very ambitious, but helping someone out in a garden, or just going out into the forest, like, being there will help you reflect and see what's actually happening within you. And then, the other thing is just to, I would say, practice expressing yourself.
Okay.
And it's not gonna come easily, especially if that's not something you've done, in a long time. And also, don't be like, oh, I don't know how to express myself, because, as kids, we all knew how to express ourselves. There was something that was, we unlearned, we were forced to step away from. So it is there. It's just going to take time to come back to and see what practice of expression you can find that sits well with you.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, that's been, it's been journaling. It's been like, I don't know if I call it dance or if it's like, body movement. It's been writing about my own experience, sharing my experience with my friends. And then, like you said, like, being vulnerable and being open to the idea that other people will accept what's happened to you, accept where you are right now, and actually be willing to help you. And those people who
might want to help you.
Yeah, and that people might want to help you.
Yeah.
And those people that don't, who react to you negatively, like, that's a really good indication that that person is not a healthy person to have in your life right now.
I think it's also valuable to add that maybe, having nobody is better than having, not necessarily nobody, but having yourself only is better than having toxic people.
Right.
Right. Sitting with yourself, being really honest with yourself, really, really honest about what you are good at, what you aren't good at, what makes you feel good, what makes you not feel good, who is being a good influence, who's not being a good influence, do you like your life, are you happy? Really being brutally honest with yourself and looking inward, is a great place to start, is inner gardening.
Yeah.
And I love the term inner gardening, because as an outdoor garden in soil, you plant seeds, the seeds grow,
Yeah.
and eventually you have a beautiful garden.
Yeah.
Same with inner gardening. You plant seeds, you start somewhere,
Yeah.
and it grows, and it grows,
Yeah.
and it grows.
Yeah.
So I think something that people should be reminded of is that everything great takes time. Everything great takes time.
Right.
And that will happen with inner gardening and outer gardening. You have to work on it. It's something that isn't going to happen overnight. It doesn't matter necessarily if, I mean, I've been suicidal. I think you've mentioned you've been suicidal. From that place to a place where now we're happy, you know? Like, everyone can start somewhere, and there's no better time to start pursuing abundance, health, and happiness than now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. You gotta start somewhere, and if you really are surrounded by toxic people, then don't forget that the trees are also people, and they'll listen to you.
Yeah.
And start somewhere. And I've been thinking about this too in terms of the garden, because we've, for a long time I've focused on, like, oh, you should start with the soil, and then do this and then do that. But life is not linear like that. Like, it's all a cycle. So if you want to start with, I'm talking about the outdoor garden, like, you want to start with the soil, or you want to start with the trees, or you want to start with the water, like, it doesn't matter. They're all feeding into each other.
Yeah.
And same with the inside. Like, wherever you start, wherever you're nourishing yourself is great. Like, you just, all you need to do is nourish yourself in whatever, start nourishing yourself in whatever way you can. And that might be even just focusing on, like, what you understand. What you understand right now might be the physical body, right? And it might be, okay, I'm going to really take time and, like, feed myself well.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to take time and I'm going to go on walks daily. Like, just do anything that is nourishing yourself. Because you take care of your, take care of your gut, you're going to take care of your emotions. It's going to bring stuff up. You start taking care of your emotions, you're going to start taking care of your gut. It doesn't matter where you start. It just matters that you start.
Exactly. And I also want to bring up something that we talked about before about you aren't separate from the garden, but you're part of the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've started to view it, like, I've been trying to think about what's the right framework to view ourselves, and it's like you have the atoms that make up the molecules, you have the molecules that make up the cells, you have the cells that make up the organs, you have the organs that make up your body, and then we are that next level. We are the organs of the earth. We are the cells of the earth. So I've been using this term now, earth body. Like, this is our body as well. Like, the cell in your liver doesn't say, like, oh, I am the liver and I'm not the body. Like,
Yeah.
it's all just bodies, different bodies.
Yeah.
So this is our body. And I think if we're open to it and we cultivate that practice, we can start to actually feel this earth body. We can start to feel the earth body like we feel our fingers, like we feel our hands. And I think culturally we're just close to that, so we don't get that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, for taking the time to share these ideologies. I really hope that I know that they'll help others.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And if anyone wants to follow along with me and my work, you can find me at farmerrishi.com or on Instagram, farmerrishi. Just type in farmerrishi anywhere, and you'll.
And that's Rishi, Rishi.
Yeah, you'll find me somewhere. So,
Okay.
And I do have a class coming up, the same class you took, the regenerative gardening class, starting September 18th. And if you are listening to this years from now, just figure out what I'm doing and connect with me.
Well, I 100% recommend the class, and go check out Farmer Rishi's stuff. I think you'll be pleasantly amused. I really hope that this helps you out there. And so thank you so much for coming on and listening, and thank you so much, Rishi.
Thank you, Kaylin. What does the universe mean to me? The universe means change, means constant change, and it also means wonder. It means seeing the miracle of everything, and it means being open to whatever happens, and being open to learning, and knowing that your learning and your growth and your change is never over. It's just a continuous process where we can always find that wonder.